Talk about stepping it up. Episode 11, our start for the end, season 2, they really stepped it up in a way where we got a fantastic episode. Now, I know this series gets a lot of hate and some very strong mixed feelings, but this episode, it was not only good, but it was damn good, because this right here is how you set up a show, before and ends next week. And we see now that this episode started off where we have our characters, they're at the airport, and of course, they don't see, any choppers that are like supposed to be there to help them get away. But we see now that one of Makoto or not Narumi, we have that other female, and we see now that she smacked the mess out of Shinowa because she was like, "Why are you alive when my friends are dead?" And then we have Shinowa trying to apologize to her, but this girl was not buying that. In fact, she was like, "If you really want to apologize, then apologize with your life and bring my friends back." And we all know that right there is impossible. But we see now that this girl, she was actually, about to kill Shinowa, even though, of course, she could not go through it. But then we have Makoto, step in, and we see that, he was the one who was, going to take over and do it himself. But obviously, he was stopped by Shinya. And right now, everyone learns that, Guren was not the one who ordered this mission. And in fact, it was Kureto. And so right now, Makoto, he was like, if Guren was the one who did not order this mission, then we have no reason to follow it. And we see now that one by one, they were slowly, abandoning this mission so that way they could go save Guren. And so we see now that Shinya, he was quiet for a little while, but then we see now that he got the idea where they all abandoned this mission and and started planning to go save Guren. And so of course that right there made everyone happy because now they were going to save their commander and the one that they really want to follow, because we all know Kureto definitely is making enemies, and after this episode that right there is a fact. But we see now that with Guren, we have all the vampire nobles now at the scene where we have those two members of Makoto's squad, where they died. And also, with that guy with the bandana, I don't recall him having a sword in his back, when they left him, last episode. So I wonder if maybe this guy wasn't dead, or is it possible that they did that to make sure he was dead? But regardless, that right there was messed up. But we see now that this one vampire was beating on Guren, and we see now that, right now, Guren was tired, and of course, this all the beatings, definitely hurt. But of course he was enduring this because the intel he would give them would make it seem more believable if if they finally cracked them. But right now we see that Farid, he actually went to Crowley. And we see now that Crowley here knew that Farid was the one who ratted out the 5 vampire nobles who are dead already. And so right now Crowley here didn't care about that, but what he cared about was that Farid had actually, also gave him, his location. And so we learn now that, Farid, he has the vampire in his clique, and we see now that Crowley was one of them. And so right now, the reason why Farid had sold him out was so that if anyone was to be suspected as a traitor, with Crowley being and Farid's clique, that right there would get rid of all the suspicion from him, which definitely makes a lot of sense. But also we finally find out that the one that Farid actually works with, and that right there is Guren. But we learn now this episode definitely reveals something major, and that right there is about Guren, and that's how he has 2 personalities. And so we see now that the first one is the side that we see, the idealist who wants to protect his friends and family, while the other is the one that's being possessed by Miharu. And we see now that and we see that side of Guren is making him become a demon, because we see now that after he has spit on that vampire, and we see the vampire lose it and slam it into the ground, messing up completely. we see that Miharu, she actually appeared in like Guren's mind, and we see now that like Guren did not even have the strength to like even resist her, and that right there, allow her to take him over. And so right now, Guren here had got rid of that noble, pretty easily. And we see now that when Miharu is in control, she can actually, like wield her sword without Guren actually touching it. And that right there, was like definitely awesome. But we see now that with Guren now in like his demon state, let's just call it that, we see that like he actually tried to go against, Cruel, and obviously that right there was like not gonna fly at all. And we even have Cruel like also, and we even have Cruel also like revealing her true side as well, where she can't kill Guren, because we see now that like she needs Guren to be alive, because he was the one that was like continuing the Seraph of the Yin. And we see now that like that Cruel also made a deal with like Miharu, who we all know is now living in Guren's sword. So I do wonder if maybe these two will talk some way somehow, because that right there will be interesting, because now it's been established that Miharu and Cruel like has some kind of deal. We definitely need a flashback of like Cruel appearing. I mean, not Cruel, but Miharu, especially about her past, because I do want to know what this deal was about. And the fact that like Cruel didn't know that Miharu was like already dead, to me, that right there was surprising. But finally, we have Guren, right in now where everybody is. And so right now we have all these nobles heading to the airport. But now at the airport, we have our characters getting ready to leave to like go save Guren. But then we see that, all these like helicopters, like they're now, flying in. And we see now that right there was the Japanese Imperial, Demon Army. And so right now that when they all landed, we have Kureto, and obviously his right hand man, who we all know is a girl, Aoi. Hopefully I'm saying her name right. But I recall now that when I said, when they first showed her, she definitely, reminded me of Mitsuba. And it's actually confirmed now in this episode that right there, was her big sister. Even though that right there was like somewhat obvious, it was definitely nice that it got confirmed though. But right now we have Kureto, speaking to everybody, telling them that their like job is over. They can now, kick back and relax. But we see now that, Makoto, he was not buying it at all. And in fact, we see him now, actually going, at Kureto and was like talking back to him. And not to mention, we also have Shinya as well, who definitely wanted some answers. And of course, even Shinya, he also didn't know about, Guren's split personality, even though Kureto did. And that right there, I do find, quite surprising, because it seems that like Shinya and Kureto, it seems like they were like somewhat close. If Aoi was like, Kureto's right hand man, I thought, Shinya was like, right under her. But apparently that right there was not the case, when Shinya did not even know all about, Kureto. And so right now, because of that, we see now that when, Kureto brought out this new weapon, and apparently, he was like going to kill Makoto for like talking back to him. We have Shinya, trying to like plead for his life. And at first, I thought that was working, but then we have Kureto saying that he was like going to die soon anyway. And finally, we see this like new weapon unleashed. And Kureto, this piece of crap, actually, did something so messed up. He did an experiment with like his new weapon on like all these men, and of course, most of the ones that got hit by this, they were obviously fodder. But for a feels effect, we saw, what's the name, like Kurito's friend, who had not Kurito's, Makoto's friend, we saw him get impaled multiple times, and that right there was like messed up. And not only that, we also have Rika, who was the girl who slapped, Shinowa, early on. She also got impaled as well, and that right there was like so messed up. But I do wonder what in the world if this weapon is like supposed to do, because all we have is our characters, like now being immobilized. But I'm pretty sure there has to be something more to it, like maybe they'll all become demons, or it's possible that, they'll become like brainwashed zombies and they will fight, under Kureto's order. Something here definitely gotta happen. But obviously when Kureto, had told Shinowa that like he would let her live because she is technically, a Hiragi. I do wonder what he meant by that. Like, is it possible that like that he's saying that Shinowa is not a full-blooded Hiragi? Like maybe that's why she is treated so badly by her family, because she's not a pure blood like them. I have no idea. But when Shinowa was like not going to actually follow his orders and instead run, we have, Kureto, like almost instantly with like no hesitation, like planning on killing her as well. But then we have, you coming in there saving her, and that right there was awesome. But now that you and Mika have arrived, they were a bit too late, because now we have all these vampire nobles as well. And so now we see, we have an all-out war with the, Imperial Demon Army and these vampires, and now the kids, they can use the confusion to escape. But I do wonder why was Guren's squad, spared, and also we have Makoto still alive as well. But right now he is like the last member of his squad left, and of course that right there is just so messed up. I definitely feel for the guy. And so we see now that, when the kids were like trying to escape by going through the vampires, we have Yu here who had went, way too far. And then we see now that like he actually spots Guren, but we see that like Guren is now in his other personality. And so when like you got close to him, all we see now is like Guren talking like himself, but he raised the sword and like swung it down. And now from the preview, we see you surrounded by fire. So I'm pretty sure that right there is the Seraph of the end taking over once again. But this time we saw like a red hand, like it belonged to a demon. I do wonder, maybe because of like Guren's betrayal, does you go crazy? But this time, like he this time I'm guessing that maybe you will fully lose himself to the power, and maybe that right there will like make him into a demon, or like some kind of monstrous angel, or if that right there like the true form of the weapon that Kureto had created. But obviously now we have like a lot more questions than answer. But hopefully they all will be answered next week. But like I said, this right here was a damn good episode. If I did have to rate it, that right there will like be an 8 or almost a 9. But as always, let me know what you guys thought, and don't forget to like and subscribe, because it really helps me out. But as always, you guys take it easy, and I will see you all next week in the finale.